Today, sir, I'm Kensa Berdalman, B. Scream 2, and now I will read to you the following topics such as guides in photographing crime scenes. A. Series of photographs of the crime scene. B. The depicted object in the photograph should not be immaterial or irrelevant. Next is the kinds of photographs to be taken at the scene. A. The photographs of a disease showing the relationship of the dead body with the surroundings, especially the physical evidence. B. Photographs of evidence showing forcible entry, destroyed padlocks, broken doors and windows, and other relevant signs of disturbance. 9 is the use of spatial photography. A. Such as infrared, ultraviolet, autotrioscopy, macro photography, photomicrography, movie, camera, or etc. B. Photography of environs. C. Close-up photographs of the wound of dead body after removal from the scene. Next is sketching the crime scene. A. Sketch. Defined, it is the graphic representation of the scene of the crime with complete measurements of relative distances of relevant objects and conditions obtaining therein. B. The general kinds of sketch. First, rough sketch. It is made by investigator at the crime scene which is full of important details but without the scale of proportion. This is used as the basis for the finished sketch. Second is finish sketch. This is a sketch with a scale of proportion and drawn by a draftsman. The rough sketch and the finished sketch are for courtroom presentation. Next is the special kinds of sketch. A. Sketch of locality. It deals with the crime scene in relation to the environs, to include neighboring buildings, structures, or means of access leading to the scene. This kind of sketch is applied in conflagrations suspected to be arson, indicating the origin of the fire and how it spread naturally or unnaturally against the wind. B. Sketch of the ground. This is the kind of sketch which illustrates the scene of the crime with the nearest physical surroundings, such as the room adjacent or opposite the room of the crime scene, the number of floors of a building or house, the yard, and other natural structures. C. Sketch in details or cross-projection view or the exploded view. It describes the immediate scene only, especially inside a room as a scene of crime. The room is treated as a cardboard box where the sides and cover collapse to the same plane as the bottom. The bottom serves as the floor, the four sides representing the walls, and the cover representing ceiling. The pieces of evidence found on the floor, walls, and ceilings are depicted or drawn with respective measurements of reference points, such as bullet holes, splatters of the blood, and other pertinent data. Next is the element of sketch. A. Measurements of a space is distance of relevant objects to their point of reference. Example, the distance of loaded pistol, the body of the victim, and the nearest wall. Points of reference must always be on 2 points to give the exact location of the object by way of latitude and longitude. The room area must be measured by the width and length, together with the heights of walls, the size of the door, and the direction of its swing. B. Compass direction. A standard arrow to indicate the north direction. To find the north without compass, determine the east where the sun rises, facing east. Your left side is north direction. C. Essential items. All items in the scene must be included. Never decide outright that some items are irrelevant. As you proceed in the investigation, these seemingly irrelevant items will become relevant of material in the investigation. D. Scale of proportion. It is an element of the finished sketch. This is not element of the rough sketch. It is proportion of the finished sketch to the actual size or measurement at the scene. The scale of 1.50 means that 1 inch is the sketch measurement is 50 inches and the actual scene measurement. E. Legend. This is usually placed at the bottom of sketch outside the sketch of the scene. The objects of the crime scene are represented by numbers of or letters in order not to unnecessarily cloud the graphic presentation. Their descriptions are found in the legend. Example, number 3. In the sketch is explained in the legend of pistol, caliber 45, SN 1234, loaded in the chamber. The 5 rounds of cartridges in the magazine. F. Title. This is the portion of sketch to identify the particular case by name of the victim, the exact address of the scene, the date and time of occurrence, the time of preparation of the sketch, and the name and signature of the sketcher. Next is collection, marking, tagging, and preservation of the evidence. A. Collection. Evidence is collected. It is individually marked with initials of the investigator. The marking tool depends the nature of the evidence. If it is hard objects such as metals, the initials are scratched or engraved by the use of sharp-pointed steel, which is called stylus. B. Marking. Every collected evidence is marked. If they are of the same class or type, such as 45 caliber fired empty shells, they are marked consecutively, such as RMB1, RMG2, RMG3, and so forth and so on. Evidence which by their nature could not be marked on each surface such as blood, hairs, fibers, are placed in the plastic container where that container is marked. C. Tagging. Every piece of evidence that is collected or marked must be tagged. A card is attached by string to the evidence with the proper identification and description together with the reference of the specific case. D. Preservation. Perishable material should be preserved the way or the methods of preservation in order that they will reach the court in the same physical condition as when they are collected from the crime scene. This is the work of laboratory technician. Next is chain of custody. Define it is the number of person handled and possess the pieces of evidence the moment that they were collected, mark and tag up the time of the final disposition of the case. The basic rule is to limit the chain of custody to avoiding tampering, substitution of loss. If the evidence need laboratory examination, the investigation must submit direct to the laboratory without delegating it into other persons. The submission is accompanied by the written request and to be officially received by the receiving officer of the laboratory. The receipt must have a legible identification of the receiver together with his signature, time, date, and receipt. If the evidence requires no laboratory examination, it must be submitted to the evidence custodian duty receipt. Next is methods of marking specific kinds of evidence. A. Guns. Revolver must be marked separately on the frame, butt, cylinder, barrel, and stock. For rifles, they should be marked of the barrel, frame, vault, or slide. All magazines or accessories shall be marked. B. Revolver cylinder. Aside from the mark of the cylinder, the chamber facing the firing pin must be marked as soon as it is opened for examination. A drawing must depict the chamber facing the firing pin, the respective position of fired empty shells, misfired or dead cartridges. A detailed examination on the respective position of the evidence could make or unmake a claim of self-defense. The, the posterior face of the cylinder must also depicted in a sketch to show the respective position of the smoke rings therein. Each chamber containing a fired empty shell will exhibit their smoke rings at the posterior portion of the chambers. When the discrepancy, the investigator must look the answer. The revolver may have been touched or tempered. The direction of the rotation of cylinder must also be sketched. Add note. Colt revolvers have clockwise direction of rotation of the cylinder. Smith and Wesson revolvers have a counterclockwise directly of cylinder rotation. C. Fired empty shells. Misfired cartridges. Strict regulations say that must be marked inside the mouth in cases of fired empty cartridges. It is nearly impossible to mark them inside the mouth, especially 22 caliber shells. But they could be marked on the side of the body of the shells, not on the base. D. Bullet or slugs. They can be marked on the ogive or nose, avoiding the land of groove marks. They could also be marked on the base. F. Reconstructing the crime. First is reconstructing the crime defined. It is assessment made by the investigator after the crime scene investigation of how crime is committed. Second is find of reconstructing the crime. A. Physical reconstructions. Reconstructing the crime is based on the physical appearance of the crime scene, mainly focused on the pieces of physical evidence and the accounts of witnesses and suspects. B. Mental reconstruction. Based on the physical reconstruction, some conclusion could be formulated taking into account all available pieces of evidence. G. The development of theories. First is theory defined. It is the imaginative contemplation of reality. Direct intellectual apprehension, insight of the body of generalization and principles developed in association with the practice in a certain field of activity. Second is the need of investigators' theory. If there are no witnesses to the commission of the crime, the investigator is left with the physical evidence to formulate how the crime is committed. In his formulation, he will form theories to guide his future actions. The investigator must begin the simplest theory of how crime was committed and by whom and what motive. He may have more than one theory depending upon the unique circumstances of every case. He will proceed in the formulation of theories from the simplest to the most complex. As the investigator progresses in the investigation and begins in simplest theory, he will discard one of the theories he formulated as the evidence warrants until he is focused in a single theory to guide him to conclude his investigation. The investigator should never disclose his theories to process because in so doing he will open himself unsavory cross-examination by the defense counsel when the case is finally brought before the court for trial. The investigator should not immediately jump to the most complex theory because experience proves that this is destructive. To illustrate this point, take a case of a rich man standing outside the gate of his house and a passerby shot him several times, all the bullets hitting the area of the genitals. To the ordinary investigator, he will jump immediately to the conclusion that the shooting incident is a crime of passion. Thus, he will harass the victim's known enemies, present the past associates and other person perceived to the enemy of victim. He will now go to the press to publish his theory, and his action is all focused on support his theory. But in the end of the investigation, the motive of killing is just simple thrill killing, and suspect did not by design intended to land all his bullets on the victim's genitals but was just an accident. The investigator then is rebuffed and embarrassed by his own rashness. Worst, he will be cross-examined by the defense counsel about his published theory, which is foreign to the movie. This is happening to our present investigators. They overly expose themselves to the press for nothing that is concrete. H. Field inquiry. Field inquiry defined it is a general questioning of all persons at near or around the crime scene. Second is when to start the field inquiry. The moment that the investigator sets foot at the crime scene, he must immediately conduct the general questioning of all persons present threat, or he may assign assistant or any members of the investigating team. Most often, the members of the Mobile Patrol Bureau who arrived the scene earlier had already conducted the field inquiry and have in custody the witnesses and or the suspects. The investigator should not stop here but conduct further field inquiry at the remaining people or those who will arrive at the scene. Third is how to treat witnesses and suspects retained at the scene. The witnesses and suspects retained at the crime scene shall be immediately transported to headquarters with the basic guidelines that they should not talk with each other during the trip and should be immediately separated with each other upon arrival at the station. Fourth is the purpose of separating the witnesses of suspects from one another. The purpose why there is need separate each witness from the other, and which applies also to suspect, is to preserve the independence of their respective accounts about the commission of the crime. I. Going back to the crime scene. First, reason for going back to the crime scene. In some instances, crimes are committed during nighttime and the investigator arrives at the scene at daytime due the late discovery or delayed report about the commission of a crime. The investigator back to the scene at the exact time when the crime occurred, in order to see himself the order of the things that precise moment. His notes of concern shall be lighting conditions, the distance of normally visibility, the volume of pedestrian and vehicle traffic, and other things and conditions relevant to his investigation. The reason is that during the progress of investigation, new matters may crop up which may be inadvertently considered irrelevant during the crime scene investigation, thus need to go back. Second is value of the process. Having first personal knowledge of these facts, he could use them to confront lying, exaggerated, or half-truth narrations of witnesses and admission and confession of suspects. These are potent tools against wayward confessions or admissions. J. The three phases of criminal investigation. First is the identification of the criminal. Second is the criminal is traced, locate, and arrest. Third is the facts of evidence to prove his guilt are gathered for introduction during trial. K. First is the four methods of identifying the criminals. First is by confession or admission. Second is by accounts or testimonies of witnesses. Third is by circumstantial evidence. Fourth is by associative evidence. L. The two kinds of criminal for purposes of identification by witnesses. First is known fugitives. The criminals are known by names and other personal circumstances by the witness even before the commission of the crime. Second is unknown fugitives. These kind of criminals are unknown to the witnesses by names and other personal circumstances before the commission of the crime. Although some of these criminals are identified by witnesses through their photograph in the Rogues Gallery and the other sources. They are classified as unknown fugitives in some past experiences. The witnesses had identified this kind of criminals through their photographs, yet they could not identify them in person during the police lineup. Next is factors affecting positive identification. First is the ability of witnesses to positively identify the unknown criminals depends upon his level of alertness, intelligence, vision, age, and health. Second is the prevailing condition of visibility and observation at the crime scene. Third is the lapse of time between the commission of the crime and the arrest of the offender. Fourth is the opportunity of criminal to vary his personal appearance, such as the removal of mustache, sideburns, goat, the change of hairstyle, the addition of tattoo on the face, earrings, nose rings, lip rings, or facelift through surgery. M. Methods of identification by witnesses. A. Verbal description. This is the physical description of the unknown fugitive by witnesses based on the extent of range of their perceptions. Second is rough or Raj Gallery. These are the police files of photographs of known criminals. These photographs may directly taken by the police or those gathered from other sources to form part of the police gallery. Third is general photographs. The investigator should show the witnesses a variety of photographs which does not necessarily represent the criminal in order for the witnesses to approximate the nearest description of the unknown fugitive. The features about the degree of baldness, shape of nose or face, scars will help the witnesses to arrive at a clear description. Fourth is cartographic sketch. It is the composite representation reduced to a drawing of a suspect face made by the artist and based on the description furnished by the witnesses. It is done by showing to witness a chart containing representation of different types of human features as to shape of face, nose, eyes, lips, ears, and others. The witnesses then select from his chart and the artist reduces it to a drawing as an approximate facial image of the unknown criminal. And the police lineup. First is the police lineup. It is the process of identification by witness of the unknown fugitive who is mixed with innocent person lined before the witnesses. Second is procedure of police lineup. A. For one suspect to be mixed with innocent persons, the lineup must be at least be composed of 7 persons of 10 persons. This increases when there are 2 or more suspects mixed with innocent person for identification. B. The appearance of those composing the lineup must be approximately the same as the height, build, complexion, hairstyle, clothing, or etc. C. The witness should be instructed before entering lineup room about the presence of the suspects. D. The suspects must be given the opportunity to select their position in the lineup. E. The lineup members are not allowed to talk during the process or make any movement which may suggest the identity of the suspects. F. The investigator should not talk or more which may indirectly identify the suspect. The power of suggestion should always be avoided. J. The proceedings must be covered by detailed report and possibly by a movie camera for court presentation. Next is center points of the physical identification. First is face. A. Shapes: square, round, oval, rectangular, heart shape, trapezoid, invested trapezoid, and other appropriate descriptions such as presence of scars, moles, birthmarks, or etc. B. Forehead. C. Eyebrow. D. Mustache, sideburns, goat. E. Eyes: deep, settled, bulging, regular, chinky, or etc. Ears: regular, bulging, scoop shape. G. Cheeks, deep pointed cheekbone, round, or etc. Nose, aquiline, pug, regular, wide, big nose, or etc. I. Mouth, small, long, round. J. Jaw, square, regular, deep, prominent, or etc. Key is lips, think, thin, tight, arc upward or downward, or etc. Teeth, missing, yellow, reddish, big, small, etc. Chin, receding, protruding, cleft, or etc. Second is hairs, curly, straight, short, crop, long, few, thick, or bushy, kinky, afro type, or etc. Third is neck, short, long, round, submerged, etc. Fourth is shoulder, broad, regular, heavy, narrow, or etc. Fifth is waist, rotund, small, regular, bulging, or etc. Sixth, hands, tat, tat, tattooed, or location, long, short, muscular, thin, scarce, birthmarks, moles, or etc. Seventh is fingers, missing, extra number, short, long, fat, regular, or etc. 8. Manner of walking, limping, amputated, left or right or degree, whether up to the knee, ankle bone, or others. 9th is voice, baritone, tenor, slow, loud, womanish accent, barking, hoarse, shattering, broken, or etc. 10th is physical appearance. A. Hispanic, B. American, C. Caucasian, D. Asian, E. Negroid. 11. Complexion, brown, tan, light, fair, white, black, dry skin, coarse, sweaty, or other approximate description. P. The physical evidence to identifying the criminal. First is kinds of physical evidence. A. Corpus delicti. These are the object of or substances which constitute the essential parts of elements of the commission of the crime. It is sometimes called the body of the crime, not the body of the victim. The cause of death is one of the essential elements of the crime. B. Associative evidence. Pieces of evidence which will link the suspect to the crime scene, as fingerprints, foot or shoe impressions, are some of the example. C. Tracing evidence. Article which assists the investigator in locating the criminal. Stolen in the possession of suspect is the example. Next is Q. Preservation and care of evidence. First is purpose. In order that the evidence gathered at the crime scene shall have the same substantial condition when they will be presented before the court during trial. Thus, care about the be exercised to avoid tampering, destruction, or substitution of the physical evidence. Second is marking. The purpose of marking is for positive and definite identification during trial. The investigator is required to identify the pieces of evidence during the trial of the case. In some instances, drug cases were dismissed due to the failure of investigator to identify where a sachet of the drug was the subject of drug pushing. From the sachet of drug subject to position. R. Next is R. Modus operandi. Modus operandi defined simply, it is the method of operation by specific criminal or criminal syndicates. It is established by a series of crime under one classification. The modus operandi is one criminal is distinct and different from each other. It is a criminal trademark, logo, or brand name. Examples are the use of a junior-sized crowbar in residential robberies, cooking and eating at the kitchen of the victim during the robbery, leaving human excreta on the rugs of victim's house, or destroying a roof sheet to gain entry on the residence. These are but few examples. Second is importance of modus operandi. A. It is one of the most useful means of identifying unknown fugitives. Thus, every investigation not should maintain a modus operandi file. B. For use of security education programs of the citizenry over the radio or television programs or in seminar about safety education. That's all, sir. Thank you.